Let's hear from James again, back in Jerusalem. He asks this question: where is Saul? No one knows. No one here in Jerusalem knows. He might be anywhere in the empire. Where has that itinerant freedom monger gone? We know where he was. After Antioch, he spent time in Galatia. But that was nearly 2 years ago. And we didn't receive that piece of information until last month. Where is he now? I wish I could send him a letter. I want to warn him away from Jerusalem. He mustn't come here. It's not just that tensions are intolerable. Hatred's both external and internal, ripping people apart. Saul can live with the tensions. Saul sports in tension like Leviathan in the sea. It's rather that trouble cries his name in the street and seeks his face particularly. There are certain men here, Pharisees and zealots, and believers too, if the truth be told, who will arrest him on sight or kill him, depending on which mood prevails. Last month, unprepared for, unexpected, 5 men arrive in Jerusalem from the northern regions of Galatia. They had traveled by land and by sea and by land again, fighting all the way along, dispatching thieves and pirates and bands of robbers, engaging in combat, it seems, with high delight and whooping exultation. 2 of the 5 are giants with long rope-like arms, yellow hair, and worm-white skin, and frozen eyes. I mean that their eyes are like chips of blue ice, and their mouths are filled with enormous blocks of teeth. All 5 entered Jerusalem armed, bearing their gross leather shields, that brutish pole, that heavy long-bladed sword of their kind. That, their appearance, their weaponry, that was enough to draw attention. Gentiles striding the sacred streets, men of threat but of no status either Rome or Judea recognized. But then they practically begged attention and pleaded for an official scourging. They walked straight to the temple. Booted and brazen, they entered the outermost court and began to stroll all gladly through the porches of Solomon, giving money away. Every time they came upon a beggar begging, they filled his hands with a heap of coins, crying out in loudish Greek, "For the poor of Jerusalem." They had bags of the stuff, 3 bags full of mammon. That apparently had been the cause and the object of all their fighting southward. The beggars, of course, jumped up and ran to the tables of the money changers because the coins the Galatians brought was Roman, stamped with images. As long as they dispensed the money in the porches, they may have been boorish fools, but they were not yet sinners. On the other hand, as soon as the white giants left the porches and entered the court of Gentiles, as soon as they came to the Nicanor gate, an entrance to the court of women, as soon as they poured forth their graven images upon the beggars sitting there, that coin became a horror and a blasphemy. A cry of outrage went up. As if against an evil wind, women clutched their robes to their throats. Old men tore their hair and began to scream. Priests ran thither and yon like ants in an anthill kicked apart. And one man in particular took specific effective action. It is nearly certain that this man, a zealot of calculation and cool ferocity, had been watching the Galatians from the moment they climbed the Temple Mount. He anticipated opportunity and had prepared. For now, he came running with a huge company of the temple guard. 30 or 40 men with knives and spears, battle ready, trembling with the hatred of these times. Those who despoil the temple need no trial. Kill them on the spot. Seeing the attack at hand, and the man who led it leveling his sword toward them, the Galatians piled their bags on the pavement and formed a circle, all of them facing outward, the giants foremost. They started to bellow, a gleeful, bull-like bulging and a dreadful sound to hear. The temple guard wilted. The man that led them felt the shift. He turned. He picked out one young man who was shrinking backward, commanded him to attack, and when he did not, slashed his neck so that the blood spouted out while the poor man stood there confused. The leader announced, "I am Mattathias. Those who will not serve the Lord must be destroyed before the Lord destroys us all." 2 Galatians burst out laughing, filled with admiration for the gesture. When Mattathias turned back to them, he discovered that an advocate had interposed himself between them and him. Barsabbas. Our Judas Barsabbas, bold in the breach after all. Mattathias, he said, speaking with as much hauteur as the zealot before him. No one questions my zeal for the Lord. I have invited hardship for the Lord's sake. I have traveled to distant regions to teach the way of God and the laws of Moses. A hush descended upon the courts of the temple. Indeed, Barsabbas was known as one who strove to preserve Israel. Mattathias himself now halted, and the Galatians broke their own ranks. They ran to Judas Barsabbas. They would have thrown their arms around him. They would have crushed him with love, except that he snapped an order in Greek that stilled them. To Mattathias now he spoke Aramaic. These men never meant any harm. They are not sinners, Mattathias, nor are they enemies of Israel. They're just stupid. They don't know the traditions. Their skulls are as thick and their mind as slow as turtles and turtle shells. But they're men of goodwill. I know. I taught them in their own city. If you will release them to me, I promise I will make them more than friends of Israel. I will make them sons. Mattathias considered this. He's a man of remarkable beauty, a Benjaminite, tall as the first king. Finally, quietly, Mattathias said, "You saw me kill young Eleazar." Barsabbas said, "I did." Mattathias said, "He has a wife and 2 children. They did not stay my hand. There can no longer be mercy among us. Mercy will abolish us. Even as I killed Eleazar, so I will kill you if any one of these men shows contempt for God or threat to Israel." He turned on his heel and departed alone, leaving the temple guard to gather the body and to clean the blood of their dead companion, while the white giants began to beat on Barsabbas until he grew angry and scolded them in Greek.